man, I'm living aspiration. Cutting off heads, I'm straight with decapitation. Y'all boys.
Yurt. Welcome back, everybody. Good morning. It's the start of the morning for me, and what I wanted to do today was I got a request from one of my close boys, Be Marrying. What he wanted me to do was explain, how I was able to pay off my debt in 2 years, and it's an accomplishment I'm proud of, and I know there's lessons that can be taken out of it, and that's why I wanted to share with you all today. Especially because so many of us, we come out of college with huge debts. Debts. Mine was $30,000 when I came out, and it became my number one priority. If you know me in my personal life, I hate debt. I hate owing people money. And I know there's good debt and I know there's bad debt, but I just hate debt, man. Like, I just hate owing people money. So when I came out of school, one of the first things I wanted to do that I made a priority was to make sure that I eliminated all my debt. That was like the number one thing on my mind when I got out of school, was that I'm gonna pay off this debt ASAP. It's not gonna sit there and be a burden on me for all those years. Some people have their debts to their 40s, their 50s, and I was like, you know what? I'm eliminating that first thing. So when I first got out of school, so the number one thing for me was to make sure that like I said, prioritize it. Make sure that you treat it as a priority. I made sure that I treated my debt as a priority. It came before anything else, so I didn't rush to go get a new apartment. I stayed at home with my parents for about 2 to 3 years. I asked my family and I said, I want to stay home, get my debt under control, eliminate that first, and then after that I'll start, I'll get my own apartment. And luckily they were cool with that. So if you have the option to stay with your parents for a certain amount of time, if that's a good situation for you, if that's a comfortable situation, if your parents will allow you to do that, I would say take advantage of it. Those 2 to 3 years of not having to pay rent, right as soon as you graduate, all that money can be used towards your debt and used towards other things to elevate you by the time you're ready to go out on your own. So that was the number one thing I did, was stay with my family for about 2 years before I decided to move out with my girl. So that was a big priority for me. Number two was the fact that when I got my checks, it's budgeting. And you'll hear this a lot when I talk about my finances, when I give you guys advice or anything like that, is the budgeting part. You have to budget. Like, you have to allocate certain percentages of your checks, of your income, to specific things and not go past the amount that you allot towards that specific topic. So for example, when I was doing my budgeting, because I made paying off my debt a number one priority, that was like the first thing I had on my list. And for me, it was that when we get these checks, in my other video I said you have to pay yourself first. So I was like, okay, this is part of paying myself off first. So I allocated anywhere between 20 to 25% of my check, I'll say about 20% of my check to my debt. Because at the same time, I don't want to spend all my money using the debt, because during that time, I also need to get my investments as well too. And that's what I would recommend to you guys that I was doing, was I had 20% going to debt, but I had about 25% going to my investments at the same time. And then other parts of the budget were saving and, leisure, stuff like that. But what you want to make sure is that when it comes to investing as well, time is of the essence. And when it comes to debt, time is of the essence, because you have these interest rates and it's piling on interest at such a fast rate and a high amount that you don't want that to prolong. You don't want your interest, remember the last video I did, you don't want your interest to keep making interest when it comes to debts. You want that to be for your investment. So I was like, okay, we're eliminating that first. So I was making sure that, one, I had my debt allocated, and then I had my investments allocated at the same time. And what I'll do was, because I was at the family restaurant all the time, we would get the tips and things like that. So when I got my little monthly tips or so, I would take that money and then use some of that for my debt. So any type of money I received within that period of time was being used towards my debt. Any type of money, like I said, whether it was income tips, etc. If I got a gift of money, right to the debt. It was number one priority. And that's how you have to treat the debt when you first get out of school, when you start getting your paychecks. Just making sure you have a good amount to start paying off and that you're allocating the time to do that. So like I said, don't rush to go get new things. I mentioned a lot of times we can rush because we just got to school, we want to be out our own. We had that freedom of being in college. I know how that feels because when we was in college, all that freedom to ourselves and then having to go back and live with our parents again was like, bruh, I've been on my own for all these years and I got to go back in the house with our parents. So like I said, don't rush towards it. And that was my biggest thing, was not rushing towards it. And I still had the same Honda that I've been driving since I was in high school. Since my senior year of high school, I had the same Honda. Didn't upgrade because for me, that wasn't the priority. My car was still good. It was still getting around, drove around fine, good condition. Yeah, there was a lot of mileage on it, whatever, but I knew what my goal was. So I didn't rush to get the new Honda. I mean, the new cars, or upgrade the Hondas and things like that. And that's the decision if somebody asked me, I would say you would have to make is, what are you going to prioritize here? Because the new cars can wait, but you don't want the debt to wait. You don't want that to pile up. The third thing that I would recommend is there's different ways to do it, and you can either start with the highest interest or the highest loan amounts. And either way is a different way of tackling it, is whichever is going to motivate you, right? If you want to start off with smaller loans, you want to take out the little ones first because you can then see it go away. And I know for a lot of people that's impactful to see the loans leaving, to see them at zero. So if you want to start with the smallest ones first, knock those out quickly. And then I know that's going to give you encouragement when you start seeing those at zero, versus sometimes for other people, when you start at a higher amount, it feels like it's not working. It takes forever, right? If you had one loan that was, let's just say $5,000, for example, and you're paying off your amounts, it's going to seem like forever because you're just watching that number go down, but it feels like it's taking an eternity. So for some people, whichever one is best for you, if you want to start with the highest interest rates, because that's going to pile on interest at a quicker amount and a larger amount, you want to take those out quicker. So it's whatever method works for you. The method I did was I paid off the highest interest rates first. I didn't want that interest to start growing and accruing at a large amount than my other ones. So for me, that was my motivation. I'm able to be very disciplined, so I tackled the interest rates first. But figure out which method you want to use. Either way will work. But it's whatever motivates you the most. Whichever one's going to encourage you to keep allocating money towards it, keep the money going, keep you staying disciplined, is the best method. So it's not a one fixed problem for everybody. You choose and you decide, but you have to make a decision on how you're going to tackle it, and you have to know yourself what works best for you, what's going to keep motivating you, and that's the third thing. And the fourth thing, what I did is the mindset too. And when I say the mindset, is that my salary wasn't the largest, right? I wasn't coming out making six figures right away and things of that nature. So a lot of times we may feel like with our salaries that we make, that we're not able to afford to keep putting all this money towards our debts. And I want you to know that that's not true, right? It doesn't matter how much income you have. If you're living below your means, if you're not going out spending more than you can afford, if you're budgeting, you'll have time and you'll have the money to pay off these loans at a quick rate. You just have to believe it. You just have to live below your means. And that ties back to what I was saying originally, is that don't rush. Don't try to go out and get all these other luxuries. Live below your means. Don't rush to get all these luxuries. Right? We have to keep that the number one priority. And never pay the minimum amount. Don't. That was one of the first things I learned in my personal finance classes back in high school, but it didn't really resonate with me until I was in college. And it was with personal finances: never pay the minimum amount. That is the worst thing to do, and it doesn't actually pay off the loan. So always pay off more than the minimum amount. you want to stick to a set number that you're allocating towards the loan a month, or whether that's whenever you get paid. I was doing it every time I got a check. I didn't wait. As soon as I got the money, whoop, right into the account. So whenever, whether that's going to be every bi-weekly for you, whether that's going to be weekly for you, whether that's going to be monthly for you, if you want to make sure that that amount is higher than the minimum amount. But you also want to be able to calculate. If you know that your loan is $30,000, correct, right? See how long it takes to break that down into 2 years monthly, right? Divide 30,000. I mean, you got to also take into factor the interest rate that it'll be growing at, but divide that number by the amount of years you want to get paid off by, and you'll see the monthly amount that should be allocated. You should be allocating roughly each month to get that loan paid off in that amount of time that you want it paid off in. And it's important to define that number for yourself, and to see it down on paper, to see it, on that screen. It's important to do that. So that's what I recommend, making sure that you pay higher than that minimum amount, and then also making sure that you calculate that number that you should at least be allocating monthly to pay off that loan in the specific amount of time that you're trying to pay it off. Those are the best ways that I would recommend. That's how I was able to pay off my debt, was just making sure that my mindset, that I was prioritizing it, making sure that each time I got my check that I was putting money towards it. Every time I got any type of money, that I was putting money towards it. Not rushing, growing the foundation, planting the seeds, being able to stay at home, not rushing to add more rent to it, not running up my credit card, adding more debt onto my plate. And that's what I would also recommend to you guys. Don't add more debt to the plate, because we already come out with so much. We don't want to add on the credit cards and things like that, because now we're adding on more debt. And that's not what you want to do. So limit the debts when you come out of school, right? On my credit cards, I don't spend more than what I have on me. So if I buy something on my credit card, if I don't actually have the money to pay it, I won't buy it. And a lot of times it's so easy, it's so tempting. I was just talking to this with one of the workers at my dentist, that it's so easy to just swipe that card, just to swipe it. It's so easy. You don't feel it right away, but that debt piles on and it comes back to you. And she was mentioning it too, like she wished she didn't do that. And that's what my advice would be to you. Don't add on more debts. Please don't use your credit card if you do not have the cash to pay it off. You want to pay that off as soon as possible. Whether that's, you use it and then you pay it off at the end of the month, just make sure that you have the money to pay off the debts that you are putting on your credit card, so that you're not accumulating more debt on top of our student loan debts. And that's the big part. So I didn't spend more than I had on me. I didn't go max out my credit card. I actually barely use my credit card. If I could, I use it, and I'm paying that off. Sometimes I'll use the card, go home, and then put the money right in the account. Or I'll just wait till the end of the month, because I know I have the money, pay it off. But it never sits, and it never accumulates. I don't do that. And that would be the biggest recommendation to you guys as well. And then the fourth part is just budgeting and living within your means. Know how much money you're making. And then how can I still live my life and still have time to pay off these debts, and still have time to save, and still have time to invest? Because we all have that ability. As I said, we just have to make certain changes or look at certain factors in our life and question, do we need it at this very moment with what we're trying to accomplish? And those are the biggest things when it comes to how I paid off my debt in 2 years, $30,000, like I said. And it feels great when you finally get rid of the debt, man, when that thing is not sitting on your shoulders and adding 20 pounds to you. I felt so great when it was eliminated. Like I said, I hate debt, man, I hate it. So when I finally got it out, it felt so great. You feel so free. It's good to know that I'm not held down by anything. I don't have any debts and stuff like that. Like, there's no money still growing on me that I still owe. Like, I have the freedom to just move here and do this and do that. And this is big for your net worth, because we're all getting this money. We're all when we're accumulating assets. If our debts are higher than our assets, then we're still in the hole. You know, we still have a negative net worth, and that's not the goal. So if you guys have any questions, if there's something you need me to go in depth about, if there's something that you want me to talk about, please let me know. As I said, you know, I'm gonna continue with the finance tips. I hope this helped you out, and I hope this helps out anybody that comes out with such large student loan debts and don't know how to tackle it, or need some advice on where to get started with it. I hope this can help you out, and I'll see you on the next one. I'm out.
Pray when it's time to ride, I never crash like Susie. Lyrics make you woozy, inspired by Juicy. The way to branch out is to kill all of these loose